good evening and welcome to this edition of PJNet.TV. For all of you who are bored with the Georgia runoff election results, welcome. You didn't want to watch that. It'll be there after we're done. But every month has a first Tuesday. And that is the day that is set aside to celebrate a renowned member of the PJNet team who is with us from his home in Pennsylvania. Ben Cooper joins us to share this time of the month, and he's a regular, almost always, in the PJNet.TV chat room. But Ben, it was touch and go whether you were going to make it tonight.
Yeah, I've been pretty much since the last month I was on here, I've been dealing with stomach intestinal virus, not once, but twice, dehydrated, lost 12 pounds, manufactured a kidney stone in that process and passed it, and now dealing with a upper respiratory. I took the home COVID test. It's not COVID, so everybody doesn't have to stop their life around me, but it's just miserable whenever your spine is chilled every time you get up and walk. That's just, don't like that. I don't even want to go get the mail or go outside, but I did something. None of my wife or my kids do not like the Christmas movie, White Christmas with Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye. I love that movie. And so it's about 2 hours long and nobody was home. I sat in the couch with a blanket and I watched that movie and enjoyed it and didn't have any naysayers with me. So that's what I did this afternoon.
Well, it hasn't been banned yet, so at least you got to see it again. But I wonder if they're going to ban the Charlie Brown Christmas.
Yeah, I doubt that. I doubt that, but that has scripture in it where the Bing Crosby show doesn't. That White Christmas does not. But I just like the military side of it, and the comedy, the singing, especially with Danny Kaye. I'm a Danny Kaye fan. Like his antics. But I sent you a message, and I didn't know if you realize this, but today's our anniversary, Mark.
I don't keep track of those things like you do. How do you know that?
Well, because it was December 2019 when I first came on.
Okay, I can verify these facts. Yeah.
And yeah, you can go on YouTube and see the past things. And and I've been doing it every month. If I missed a month, maybe had somebody fill in for me. You or Barbara quickly filled me in with another slot that was an opening, and so I really didn't miss anything. So November I met you in Ohio of 2019 and talked with you, and then started watching PJNet about the time this one character from Texas that has a ranch started watching. And we kind of JD and I kind of hit it off right off the bat, pretty much around the same time, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, I'm showing the first episode that you appeared was January 7th of 2020. According to the file, now I may have been errant in, the way I kept things, but in any event,
well, either it's 3 years coming up in this month or next month.
It's about 3 years. So, and there could have been one before that fell through the cracks. I don't know.
I might have did one couple of months, once, 2 in 1 month, filling in for somebody else. So,
I could.
I think.
Well, Ben, I know it's been a blessing for me, and I'm sure it's been a blessing for others. And it takes, it says something when you can say that most marriages don't last 3 months anymore, or 3 years anymore. And most businesses that start up don't last 3 years anymore, or it's always been that way. But there's been so much that has happened. There's been so much that changed, but yet there are also so many things that are unchanged. And Ben, I think I always look forward to you sharing, but I can say that I like the person when I met you, and you've been very faithful and like a rock in so many ways. You haven't changed. You've gotten older. I haven't, but you
We're
have.
all,
Yeah.
as Coach says, one more lap around the sun each year. But you know, and I appreciate. I just called to tell you yesterday I wasn't feeling good. Wasn't sure if I was going to have to get the substitute, and that ended up to be about an hour and a half conversation, did it, Mark?
Most conversations with Ben are they're seldom short. Put it that way, and that's a great thing.
But I shared some things, and I wanted to, I guess, reiterate that. I put on my little advertisement, um, ambition with a mission, and that happens to be the theme for the event that I'm planning for October next year for a writer's summit. And I don't want to give away all my emphasis and saving some back. Uh, Ambition can be seen in a lot of different things, and there's good ambition, there's godly ambition, and then there's selfish ambition. And we got to talking about the Christian life. You know, we were talking about change, and I'm sure, I don't know if Doug's in the chat room or not, but there's change in the air. I shared with you Jim Dennison that he does a forum, he does a podcast. I guess whenever you're real popular, you write an article every day, but then you pay somebody else to read it and call it a podcast.
Okay.
And that gets put up. That gets put up. But December 1st this year, just a few days ago, Jim Dennison read, or I read his report, his forum, and I was amazed. It said, I'm going to look at some cheat notes that I have here. England and Wales no longer considers themselves a Christian nation. Here's the stats. From 2011, 59% of their population identified as Christians. 2021, 46%. So it's dropping. But the odd part is 37% attribute themselves to no religion whatsoever. None whatsoever. And I see that trend in the United States. In Dennison's report, he said in 1972, I was probably baling hay, not this time of year, but working on the farm, wasn't old enough to drive yet. But in 1972, 90% of American citizens identified as a Judeo-Christian heritage background. In 2020, that's dropped to 64%, and it isn't a steady downward recession. It's dropping off fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's moving at an exponential rate, and it won't be long, probably a year or two, before we'll be below 50% of America's population don't consider themselves Christian. When our founding documents are Christian and half the people don't identify as that, you can see what's happening, why they want to take away things and rewrite culture to what's current, because all that stuff's outdated. But as we talked yesterday, some people might remember when earlier this year, it was around Easter, I had what I call my Caribbean son, or son in the faith. Kerry Bonaparte was on with me, and oddly enough, I rarely hear from him, but when he calls, there's something that he's about to do or in the middle of doing. And I'm not shocked to get a phone call from him from an airport as he's biding his time waiting. And that happened Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And I said, Kerry, where are you? And he said, I'm at Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. I said, oh, what are you doing? Getting connecting flight to go to St. Lucia, where his mom lives and his family. He said, no, I'm going to Zambia. I said, Africa? He's never been to the continent of Africa before. And I said, who's going with you? He said, no one. And I started prompting him. I said, uh, that's what he does. I shared with you yesterday how God can amazingly do good things despite us. And when he was in Bolivia, uh, he went with really no money, but I had a name of the person he was working with in the country Bolivia, and I sent by Wells Fargo, our Western Union, wired him $100, and you seem to know more than I did that he was he was um, he was rich, he was wealthy
Mm-hmm.
in that conversion, and that sustained him for 3 months. He had food, he had shelter, working with boys camp with troubled boys, but other incidentals. But so I said, so Carrie, what are you doing going to Africa? What's the plan? He said, other people in his church says, you're leaving your wife and 5 kids on Thanksgiving. You got to realize he's not an American, and Thanksgiving isn't a tradition
Mm-hmm.
for non-Americans.
Right.
His wife is, but he says, I'm going to seek out and find a couple pastors, local indigenous pastors of Zambia that our church will support. And so I said, you know what? I agree 100%. I support somebody from Bangladesh. It's a family. They had their house church destroyed by Muslims that came in and ripped everything apart. Then there's flooding, and so they're in the process of building another house. But the finances that it takes for a missionary, and I'm not anti-missionary, because there's great people that left their country, left their comfort, and went and to share the gospel. But I'm wondering how effective that is as we see change
Or how
happening.
efficient. Yeah, it's a matter of efficiency.
Efficiency, God can work with any of those numbers. He doesn't own one cow on a hill. He owns all the cows on 1,000 hills.
Mm-hmm.
They're all his. So it's his to divvy out and apportion out to those. But um, when I see the numbers that's in the innocent report, it made me kind of backpedal and think, why are we sending missionaries to another country when we're losing our own people
Mm.
in our own cities, in our own towns, in our own neighborhoods, and people are being disinterested in Christianity altogether? We need to be sending people across the street, helping and working, and it costs far less. I don't want to be Judas carrying the
Mm-hmm.
purse strings and say, oh, we could sell this alabaster flask of perfume and it would help a lot of people, because there was a purpose for Jesus being anointed, or that perfume being anointed um, uh, at that time for his purpose. And I understand that. But when we look at just the missionaries 40 years ago didn't have a 401k or a retirement plan. They didn't have an exiting plan if COVID happened and they had to leave all of a sudden. They didn't have all these other things that were going on. They would just go, and be honest, a lot of them, you know what, if you get to 80%, we'll let you go to the field and maybe you'll make up a little bit more there. Um, I don't know what churches across the United States are, whether their missions are down or up or whatever, or less people are going. We support a family that has a missionary orphanage in Morocco, and I won't give names of those people for protection in a Muslim country, but husband and wife have been there over 60 years,
Mm.
looking for replacements to adopt young kids. They're in their 80s and they can't adopt kids anymore because it's too much work for them. But they're still running finances and the school and some other things. But as we look at what is our ambition, what is our purpose apart from sharing the gospel. And we don't have to go. Now, I've been out of the country 4 different times on missionary trips. I know you've been out of the country before. I think it's great to go for a short-term mission trip to see how blessed we are whenever we think we have it bad.
Yeah.
We talked yesterday about the Dominican Republic, and that's poverty upon poverty. But to see what, at a fraction of the cost, what it would support for an indigenous pastor and his family would stretch far beyond and let missionaries. It's almost like not a stigma. It's like, oh, so and so is a missionary to Africa. And, they're an elite. Now, they didn't live an elite life, but because they went and they're gone, you almost have a high status in people here, and people might give money to them to go preach to a group of people in another country, but they don't go across the street. You said yesterday, with that post that you posted about the huddle. I don't know if you wanted to share that or not.
Well, time doesn't permit, but maybe we'll pick it up another time. We're running out of time, but there's about 3 things on my mind. You just made it 4. I'm going to whittle it down to 2. Okay. Tammy just put something in the chat room that really has got me under some conviction, and it reads, that's a great point, Ben. We need to, quote, put our oxygen mask on first, end of quote, so that we can help others better. That's an excellent illustration. Here, if there's a takeaway from what I'm hearing you say, it's this. We here tend to think of missionaries as people that we send out. That's not my understanding of the Great Commission. If you are a Christian, you and I are missionaries. There's no doubt in my mind. You are appointed, you are ordained as a missionary when you accept Christ, because we are to go make disciples. That's what it says. And until we grapple with that and come to terms with that, nothing else matters. We need to quit thinking of missionaries as someone else. We need to start thinking of missionaries. And I could go a long ways, and I've got a lot of other things, but time doesn't permit. But Ben, you're exactly right, and I do know from firsthand experience just in sheer raw efficiency, it would be far more efficient to send money to a trusted, individual in another country. $100 here won't do much, but $100 in the Dominican Republic, the annual that exceeds the annual income of most people there. Okay, it's abject poverty beyond your. It's very grievous.
Well, Carrie said something. Carrie said something that just struck a chord with me, and I agree 100%. He says, I want to be a pastor that goes, visits, and finds missionaries out in the field, rather than them having to come back and tell us what we did and what's going on.
Yeah.
I want to go visit them, and it's just one person, and he's going. I want to make sure I said first, shared 1 John 4:4 says, he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if we're going across the street or going across the world. If we have Christ, like you said, we are commissioned to be missionaries, and the gospel is just as important in the United States as it is anywhere else.
Well, and Nehemiah led his people, don't think about building the wall around the city. Build the wall that's in your backyard. And if we each do that, the wall around the city takes care of itself. But I've had the good fortune of having enjoyed the honor and the work of numerous internet. But I can promise you it's inefficient. We're out of time. If you want to talk more about mission trips, I would welcome the opportunity to share my experiences with you. And it'll change your life. I've never known anybody to go on a mission trip and come back and say, I tried that. It's just not my cup of tea. It will change you probably more than it will change those you work with in most cases. Yeah. But Ben, we need to have a burden for missions, and I say that in the local sense as well as the internet. If God is calling you to do something in Mongolia, then do that. But I assure you, you don't have to go to Mongolia to find people who need to hear the gospel. They're in our backyards. They're in our everyday lives. They're in line with us as we wait to check out at the grocery store. God, remove the scales from our eyes, please. Help us to see the opportunities that are so abundant right around us.
Saying that I don't know if I ever heard it anywhere else. I wrote down years ago that came to me, and it could be a Christian or a church, but I wrote it down as a church without a missionary focus is a church out of focus, or a Christian without a missionary focus is a Christian out of focus. And we just need to be focused in on that most important thing.
Amen. Well, Ben, thank you for sharing. I hope your recovery, I hope you're on the downhill slope here and you come in for a good, safe landing. But thank you for sharing. I wish we had more time, but you know what? We'll do this again.
3 more years, right, Coach?
3 at least, I hope. But Godspeed. Thank you, Ben. We love you, brother.
All right, thanks.
Ben Cooper here on PJ. I love doing this. I just love doing this. It just gives my heart joy to not only the fellowship, but the sharing of what God is doing in each life of the Christians who we are so honored to have share their story on our program. In just a few minutes, we will have Del Didway share his adventures, and it is an adventure when it's Del. And while we wait on him, I've got things to do, but here's the assignment I would like you to consider while I'm doing all that. Ask yourself these 2 questions. What is the boldest thing, the single boldest thing ever that you've done in the kingdom of Christ? There's another question that follows up on that one, and here it is. When was that? And the challenge is to never be satisfied with either answer.